So tune in daily on Freeview Channel 73 and Sky Channel 687 and shop online at sewingquarter.com.
I know so many people are going to be waiting for this hour. We've seen all of the adverts. We've been really looking forward to welcoming Helen here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go over the kits because we want to spend as much time this hour with Helen, obviously. We have the most beautiful instructions and we're going to learn all about goldwork and all about Helen McCook and her embroidery. She's amazing and you're going to absolutely love her. So, which one do you want to do first, Paul? Let's do the dragonfly. So we've got a dragonfly and a butterfly. You might have seen the two in the hoop that we've already shown to you earlier on. This is the dragonfly, which again, I mean, Wendy and Helen have been working together to put together these instruction booklets for you, which actually even include Helen's own artwork, some really beautiful hints and tips and photography, along with all of your instructions in text as well. We've never, in 2 years, done goldwork before. So we are so excited about this. I was actually messaging one of our Search for a Star finalists yesterday, Ellen, and she was saying, I'm going to be watching. I'm so excited to see this because she's always wanted to see goldwork, and I know so many sewing enthusiasts will also be thinking the same. So in the kit, you get your dragonfly metal thread kit, which looks like this. Now, I don't know what's in here, so we're going to go through it. We're new to this as well, so we're going to go through it with Helen. Everything that you're going to need will be in here. You also, thanks to Leah, we've managed to get some brand new embroidery hoops, which are just gorgeous and I think going to complement Helen's designs beautifully. These are all Helen's designs. You also get 2 brand new skeins. There they are in the image. Brand new silk fat quarter, which is in our lovely sewing quarter turquoise as well. A fat quarter of your silk for £49.99. That's everything, including the hoop as well. Okay, that's the first kit. The other butterfly kit is virtually the same, well, a bit just with the different kit that Helen's put together for us. So, this is your beautiful butterfly design. It's amazing, isn't it? It just looks like jewellery. It sparkles. It looks amazing. Helen and I were talking about this earlier on. Everything that you see of Helen's work, you are just going to want to dive in and touch. They are all amazing. They're so indulgent. There it is. See what I mean? It's just so impressive. So much so that I thought, do you know what? I'm never going to be able to do this. These are absolutely works of art. But Helen has assured us that this is something you are going to be able to do. It looks very complicated and it looks like you cannot put a stitch wrong, but we're all going to have a go at this. Victoria Carrington, Cara and I are all enrolling on Helen's, we're just saying in the break, right, we're going on one of her workshops. They're brilliant. So in the kit, again, you get your hoop. Lovely and rustic, isn't it? I do like these. They're gorgeous. Brand new today. You also get your fat quarter, your silk. You then, in this one, will get all of Helen's butterfly thread kit. We'll go through all this with Helen. Anyway, also, have you noticed that it has actually got Swarovski crystals, which just look beautiful? We've managed to source our Swarovski crystals. So if you want to add them to embellish any of your embroidery artwork, it is artwork. It's just amazing. £2.99 for your 12-pack of 4mm Swarovski crystals. Okay, come on, let's go and meet her. There it is. That's what we're going to be making. That's what we're going to be creating. Hello.
Hello, nice to see you.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you here. It's such an honour to have you here. I've been Googling and having a look on the internet at all of your I mean, we could sit and talk to you for the whole day.
Oh, thank you.
You're a writer, an author, a historian, a designer.
I don't sleep much.
You've done so much. We've got so much to talk about. I'm just gutted we've only got an hour.
I know, we can squeeze it in as much as we can though, so.
And the best thing is, you're a Midlander, you're from Birmingham.
Good Brummie girl, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Nice to be home, so.
Yeah, nice little easy journey for you, isn't it?
I know, it's really easy this morning, couldn't believe it.
Well, thank you for putting these kits together.
My pleasure.
They are beautiful. They are beautiful. I mean, you've brought in as well some of your creations, which...
Yeah, selection of goodies. So.
They are unbelievable.
Well, the thing about a birthday is you've got to have sparkle, so...
We've never done gold work. You have absolutely bought the sparkle. That's what I love about this gold work actually is, I mean, you've got a selection of lots of your work here, but when you see the gold work pieces, they do.
They really just hop off the fabric, don't they? You just really want to get in there and do it.
So how did you get into it then?
Bit serendipitous. So basically I did a degree in print and dyed textiles with art history, and then
with art history as well. I know I was talking to Wendy about this yesterday, that she was saying it's your love of history as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm such a history geek. Such a history geek. You know, it's 17th century embroidery, particularly from Britain, but like you name it, I'm interested in it. It's the story of it, how it developed, where it goes from, where it goes to, how it got there. I love it. So it's the personal touch of it though, how, you know, it's a very personal type of art form, so hands-on.
You started off at university
in Birmingham,
textiles, okay.
And then went to the Royal School of Needlework, so I became apprentice there for 3 years. So I left there in 2000 as a graduate apprentice.
And now you're a lecturer there?
Yeah, so I teach and lecture for them all over the world, but I run the Scottish branch, I do stuff in headquarters at Hampton Court Palace, and I do stuff in Birmingham branch and Rugby branch as well. So.
But you're based here in the Jewellery Quarter, aren't you?
Yes, I've got my own studio in the Jewellery Quarter, so it's good to be in the kind of heritage making area in Birmingham. So lots going on there and lots to see. So
so you're still doing, obviously you're lecturing and busy all over the world.
So I like to balance all the different aspects of the things that interest me in textiles. So I make new pieces for people to make themselves. So and I teach them how to do it or do kits. And you make pieces for designers, you know, fashion, theatre, you name it.
Yeah, you name it. I've got to just drop this in there already. So I don't know if you've heard, but I'm getting married in July, and you've worked on a very special wedding dress.
Yes, I did. I was very lucky to work on a very special wedding dress. I worked on the wedding veil, the dress and the shoes for Catherine Middleton when she married Prince William. So that was a really special commission that I worked on as part of the Royal School Needlework team. So it was a fantastic experience working on it. She was delightful, you know, it was an amazing thing to be able to share with people as well. So people quite often, they're not too sure as an embroiderer what you do these days. They think you're doing, you know, rugby caps and things. So nothing wrong with that, but it's not really what I do. So to be able to kind of show people a finished product and go, actually, we did that, you know, it was a fantastic thing. So.
Oh, amazing. I mean, the wealth of experience that you've got is just mind-blowing. It's amazing. So this is something that anybody that hasn't done gold work before is going, I don't think I could ever do that. They are works of art. How are we going to be able to do this?
The thing is, as with everything, it's eating that elephant is one bite at a time. So it's
I've not heard that analogy. I like that.
Yeah, well,
tasty.
It's one of the things is that it's step by step, and there's a very orderly process to gold work. So you start with the couch threads. You put those on first because they're flat, they're quite malleable.
Right. So we'll have a look through the kit. So what have we got in the packs that you've put together?
You've got things that are called passing threads. So we've got this in all different colours. So I don't know whether you can see that, but they're very shiny. They have a thread core, and they are frayable. So the only thing that we need to make sure that we do with this, it's very easy to work with, is you couch it down, hold it down with a stitch on the surface of the fabric, and then you make sure that at the start and the end, you leave an inch tail that we take through to the back and over sew to fasten it off securely so it doesn't fray. So that's the first type that we work with. And then we'll work with a type called purl, which is looks like little beads. Yeah. Looks like a row of little beads. So it's a really lovely thread as well. It's just made like a spring, but quite hard. So you can kind of mould with it and sculpt with it. And you can see it's kind of got a body and life of its own. And so we again stitch that down, but it's not frayable because it doesn't have a thread core. So you basically don't need to have anything spare at the start and finish. So that's great. So once it's on, it's on.
Yeah.
And then we've got obviously the crystals. You can put the crystals on there. So we'll be looking at how you put those on because they've got the little metal mounts. So we'll be talking about how you stitch those on. So, you know, if you're going to put a sparkle on, you may as well really go for it. So,
absolutely.
And then we've got things like the bright check, and we've got that in different colours.
That's what's sparkling as well, so beautifully, isn't it?
So this one's an interesting one because this is a breakable thread, which is, people quite often worry about gold work because they think, oh, I'm going to make a mess of it. But there's different types of metal, and that's also what puts people off because there's lots of different names. So as I say, passing and Japanese, it's things that you couch with. Bright check and smooth, they're the ones that you cut to size and then stitch down like a bead. So that's what we're going to do with this. We're going to do chips into the wings of our dragonfly and butterfly. And they're really lovely, as I say, they're soft, they're easy to work with, and it's made a bit like a spiral, but instead of being circular, it's got facets, which is what makes it twinkle.
Yeah.
So to do chips, we cut them into small pieces, stitch them down like a bead flat at different angles, and it makes the twinkle kind of magnify. It's multiplying that twinkle factor. So it's a really lovely finish, as I say. So we'll be taking you through all of those, and hopefully people will feel confident not only to do these, but to have a bash with other types of metal as well.
Well, that's it. That's what's brilliant. And in the instructions as well, you give all your templates, which are beautiful. We're working with the butterfly and the dragonfly. You're an artist as well, obviously. I could not draw out things like this. So you started off, did you say?
Yeah, so my interest was art initially. So I started off as a printer and dyer, and all of that's kind of underpinned with the drawing skills, the design skills, colour, colour theory. So basically I just went from there, and I've always loved texture. We were talking earlier and I was saying I was every shopkeeper's nightmare when I was a child. My mum used to have me by the chops, don't touch anything. And as soon as the back was turned, I'd just have my hands up all the textures, and I haven't changed. And that's why I love texture on embroidery. It's the thing that kind of attracted me to it. Yeah. So get your hands in there, give it a go. Everyone kind of always says, oh, I'm not patient enough for that. And it's not about patience, it's about that there's never any lost time. So whatever you're putting into it, even if it's not gone quite how you want it to, it's easy to reverse, and you can just have another bash at it. And there's plenty of threads in the packs. If you feel that it's not going quite how you want, you can always just take it off and have another go.
Oh, brilliant.
So, yeah.
Lovely. So I love the fact that Helen's put these kits together for us because they're going to work, aren't they? You follow her instructions, they're going to work. So where do we start? Once we've got the kit, you've got this gorgeous silk.
Yeah, so you've got this beautiful silk. It's a silk dupion, and it's a shot silk. So it means it has that slight iridescence to it. So it's a two-way colour. So the weave thread and the weft thread are slightly different tones. So you've got a two-tone finish to it. Right. So it's got that lovely kind of luscious kind of sheen. So that's the lovely thing about that. You'll get a template in your pack. So what you need to do is you need to get your favourite way of transferring it on, whether it's a waterproof pen or the Soline pens, for example. That's what this is. It's a quilting pencil. And what you'll do is put it onto your light box, and then you'll literally just transfer your design on so that you can just draw it over. It's nice and clear. As I say, draw it on so that you can see the whole thing. And these lines will all be covered, so you just don't need to worry about it. So once you've got it on nice and neatly, try not to feather the line, try and get one smooth line. So just take your time with it. Nobody's sitting there with the time stop clock on you. So get it all on there as much as you can, and once you're happy with that, you'll see, you'll get your lovely line to follow. And as I say, the good thing about a quilting pencil is you can obviously lift it off afterwards. If there's anything you've slightly missed, you can rub it off with the fabric eraser, or you can get scotch tape off and just lift any residue off without it damaging. You obviously don't really want to get silk wet, and preferably you don't want to get your metals wet. So it's better to obviously not be washing the piece. But if you can avoid those things, then that's fantastic. And with mine, sometimes just to make it a bit darker to see, my sample, rather than doing a full line, I've done little dots. And if you're doing fine finishes, sometimes if you've got very fine lines like the legs, sometimes it's nice to do a series of little dots, so it's easier to cover that line rather than having one solid line. And if you go slightly off, you worry about it. But as I say, with the quilting pencil, you don't need to worry about that because you can lift it off really easily. So that's the first stage. You need to transfer your design on, and once you've got that done, you can get into your hoop. So once you've got your hoop sorted, we're ready to start stitching.
Brilliant.
So,
you've had so many lovely messages coming in, by the way. Loads of love. Too many to even read out, so we'll make sure that they'll be sent through to you.
Thank you. That's really lovely. Thanks.
Yeah, everyone's been really, really looking forward to this show.
It's been really exciting. It's something different. Yeah, I mean, there's so many techniques, and as I say, being able to share the techniques, and not only the fact that I love it, there's so much to see and so much to do. And if you find a technique that you don't love, you try the next one, and it's that you'll find a passion for it.
When you do your courses and your workshops, do you find that beginners come to you?
Absolutely. I've had people who've never picked up a needle before, and I've had people who've been doing stitching for years and want to be able to push to the next level. So basically the idea is that you look at the level they're at, you find a course that's appropriate for them in the technique that interests them initially, and you'll take them through the process, and it's all step by step, it's all very logical. You do tips and tricks to make sure that they're kind of adapting it to suit them, and they're well away. They go home and they'll suddenly be like, oh, I've done this and I've done that, and now I'm really interested in this, and the confidence builds. So once you've got the confidence on one thing, you'll suddenly be like, okay, I'm ready to try the next thing. So it's all interlinks.
So what is the history under gold work?
Well, gold work,
I don't know too
I
much
mean,
about
we've
it.
always related gold work to special occasions. So originally it was used traditionally in ecclesiastical work, so the church work, and pomp and pageantry. So we still use it these days for the same thing. So, kind of ceremonial banners, things like the militaria. So anything that's special, special occasions, things like the coronation robes for the monarch on their coronation dates, all got the gold embroidery on. It's special occasions, and because we see gold and it's got that sheen and lustre, and we kind of associate it with richness and special things. So because of that, it's become something that people want to do but feel a bit nervous about. So hopefully we'll be able to dispel a few of those myths today.
There you go, and demystifying it.
Yes,
So you've transferred our pattern onto the silk.
So we've transferred the pattern on, and what we need to do first is we've got some gold passing thread. So this is the fine thread that we talked about before. You've got different colours. It's smooth, it's the one with the thread core, and it's wrapped round, the metal is wrapped around a thread core. So we need to leave a certain amount of that to be able to start and finish. So I'm just going to cut a section of this off so that we can get rid of that. And then what we do is we need to measure out, because you've got it in long lengths. Now I'm going to start by going round this section, because I want to show you how you start off, how you get it moving, and how you do some little wobbly bits like the corners, because quite often that's the thing that people kind of worry about. A straight line doesn't feel so precious, but actually when you're getting curves and turns, they kind of worry about how to get the corners. So the best thing to do is to get your gold out of the pack. You allow about 1 inch, and we're going to start in the corner, and you're going to just walk round, allow a little bit more, so 1 inch extra, and then fold it in half. Cut through the thread, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the centre of that, so put the two ends together, and then just give it a little pinch to encourage it to have a turn. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a little turn there. So what we're going to do is I've taken some of the blue thread. So this is a mercerised cotton, which is a really nice weight to work with. I've come up, I've gone through the loop, and I'm going back down again, and it's going to hold that to the fabric. So you've basically got that loop, you've come up, you've gone down, and it pegs it into position. So what we're then going to do is, if you've got your two pieces of metal, now I want to put a stitch that holds it into position, so I'm basically pegging it down like a tent peg. So I'll come up on my line on one side of the line, and I'll go down just on the other side of the line. So, and you want to allow the width of the metal in between, so that the tent peg holds it into position. So if your metal is that size, if my stitch is a lot bigger, so if it's a lot wider, it's obviously not going to hold the metal in place. Whereas if it's kind of hugs that metal, you'll get a better finish. So you're going to allow stitches at about every kind of 2 to 3 millimetres. Anything up to 4 is fine, 4 millimetres. And you'll want to try and get them nice and even. Okay. And you want the metal to not twist over each other, you want them to follow a path. Right. Okay, so, because otherwise, if you lie them flat, you get a lovely sheen to the metal, whereas if they twist over each other, they start to get shadows, so it starts to look less smooth. So you just keep running along the shape like that. Okay, so just repetition, keep going.
It's very therapeutic, actually.
You know what? There's been so many studies recently about the wellness factor of embroidery, crafts generally, but embroidery particularly, because there is a slower pace to it. And I know a lot of people think that's going to be quite frustrating, but actually once you get into it, that pace, you can see it developing, so you can see where you're going with it. So, and once you get used to it, you get more confident and your speed picks up. But it's one of those things that you just want to start going along with it and keep going. And as I say, you just keep going like that.
So you're following your dotted line that you've made?
I am, I'm following my outline all the way around the outside line. So that's you, and we do that for all of these shapes. So you can see that you go all the way around and all the way to the bottom, and we have like an inch spare at the end, which I'll show you later how to finish off. And then we can do them, as I say, this is just in a different colour, so it started at this point with the curve and held it down and then stitched over it, left an inch long here, and then this again we've gone round on ourselves. All of these sections are stitched the same way, and the top wing is stitched down in the blue strand in this colour, and then the bottom wing is stitched down into the pinky red tone, so you get a lovely little tonal change. So with the
butterfly kit, you get all of these threads in.
Absolutely, you get all the threads in there, so you've got all the right amount of threads and a bit extra for you to play with, basically. So you can really have a good bash with that and feel that you kind of developing along. So as I say, it's one of those things that you can just take your time, have a go with it. You know, they always say, people always say, well, you know, you must be so patient, and I'm actually one of the least patient people you're probably ever going to meet.
Which is rare when you're talking about embroidery.
Yes.
You would think you need a lot of patience.
Yeah, you know, it's really funny though, because some people lose track of the time when they're gardening or reading a book. I love those things, but the thing that I lose myself in is stitching. And because, as I say, you can see that development, you can see where it's going. It's just, as I say, my timekeeping is pretty atrocious anyway. So I don't wear a watch, for example.
But I bet you have to be quite efficient with your time when you're working on such big commissions and you're working with...
Yeah, I set alarm clocks. So, so if I'm working on something and I have to go and meet somebody, I'll always set an alarm clock, because I will miss that appointment otherwise. Because I'm just getting so engrossed. So, and you know, people who stitch know exactly what I'm talking about. They've all been there. They appreciate it. So it's just one of those things. But as I say, you kind of just find yourself getting lost in the technique. So the other thing about gold work is you want to make sure that you're working in good light, because you want to be able to see it, obviously, and see the stitching, but if you're in light that's too strong, the light will bounce back off the gold, and you'll feel a bit snowblind. So you kind of don't want to dazzle yourself, so you really want to make sure that you're kind of positioning it. Sometimes it's just tilting the frame slightly so that you're comfortable. So it's just keeping an eye on those things. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump forward. I'm going to trim that. I'm going to jump forward to this textured area at the bottom of the wing.
I do love how you created that though. Can you see how quickly Helen has just done this part, which does look beautiful when it's wrapped in. It looks literally like separate beads, parts of gold.
It does, doesn't it? The thing is about gold work, it looks so complicated once you've finished it, but when you start working through it step by step, as I say, it's actually quite a logical process. So it's just the end result dazzles you and kind of blinds you to the simplicity of the process. So being able to share that is really lovely. So,
well, again, we've had lots of messages. Mary said, I'm loving Helen's enthusiasm. Never done this before, but certainly going to give it a try.
Feels
so
like
just
a win.
like you say, to demystify it and to break it down.
Absolutely. You start the stitching. We'll be starting a new obsession. I will not be paying for your stitch therapy, I'm afraid. But
it comes with an addiction warning.
I fully give you the addiction warning right now. We'll hook you in, and that'll be you done for life. So it's
So
just,
when did you start gold work?
You know what, I started gold work at the Royal School, so when I was an apprentice, and I'd seen gold work on things obviously, but I'd never had a go, and I'd never stitched until I went there. And the way that they taught it was so clever and just so straightforward, and it's the way that I've always approached it since. And I do lots of experimentation with gold work and things that you can do traditionally and things that you can't do traditionally, and playing with the rules, you know, throw the rule book out the window sometimes. But that was where I first did it, and I've just loved it ever since, and I've just been a complete sucker for it. So there's two ways of turning a point on this. So if we want to get a nice sharp point, if we want to get a slightly more gentle curve, what you can do is you can come up, and I'm actually going to just stick those ends flat so you can see a bit clearer. I'm just going to use Scotch tape to just stick those out of the way. So what you can do is you can just make sure that you stitch really into position, hold it tight, hold the thread, hold the couching thread tight underneath, and then bend it back on itself. Because the gold has got that thread core, it wants to just keep going in a soft bend. So if you really pull that holding stitch tight underneath and then press it, it encourages the core to kink. So that will be easier then to manipulate it into a new shape. So that's the one way of turning corners. So you can see you automatically then get a lovely little bend.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to, then you can then give that an extra little pinch with your fingertips or with some tweezers. So
you actually can manipulate it quite well, can't you?
It's easier than people think. As I say, people think, oh, it's not for me because it's very complex and very fancy, and you know, there's a lot of rules to it. And actually, it's, as with everything, it's one of those things that you really want to play with it so that you feel comfortable with the threads. So, you know, if you have any spare threads left over at the end of having the pack, just get some calico in a frame and just start playing with it. You know, nobody's going to sit there and say, well, that's not right.
Yeah.
You know?
So what is it that you need to get started? You need a hoop?
Yeah, you need an embroidery hoop. I like one that you don't have to hold, because the thing about having a freestanding hoop, whether it's a seat frame, floor stand, you know, a barrel clamp, whatever, if you're having to hold it, it's taking one hand out of commission. So you've got two hands, you want to use them. Yeah. And it helps you to manipulate if you've got two hands. But equally, it can be quite hard on your hands if you're holding the frame. And sometimes that's the thing that makes people put the embroidery hoop down. So they'll be stitching for a little while, their hand will get sore, so they put it down. Whereas if you're doing it like this, you'll actually find yourself stitching a bit longer. Yeah. I'm fueling that obsession again, aren't I? So, sorry guys. But yeah, so it's one of those things that you just want to think about the position that you're sitting in when you're working at it, make it comfortable for you. And
yeah, think about your posture, because you said you actually, when you're doing commissions and you're doing projects, then you actually find yourself aching it, muscles hurting in places you didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know you had muscles, and that you're sort of like, how can that be hurting? Yeah. But yeah, so it's a question of, you know, making sure that you've got good light, making sure that you're sitting correctly, always fueled by biscuits. Yeah. Yeah. So it's you know, we try and keep the biscuits and the embroidery separate. You know, eating a different, step up and away from your work to eat your biscuits. You know, so you get a little break. It's a good incentive.
Especially if you're working on Kate Middleton's dress, you can't be eating your cake.
There were absolutely 100% no biscuits near that dress. You know, absolutely not. So, but yeah, so it's just good practice. But it's also giving yourself a bit of a break, because as much as it's really easy to get obsessed and get into it, you know, don't take it to a dark place. Don't sit there and think, I've got to finish the wing before I go to the toilet. You know, people do that. People do that. It's you're taking it to a bad place, and your kidneys are going to blame me. I'm not having that. But it's one of those things. So you need to get comfortable. So I prefer a ring frame that you don't have to hold. Good lighting, comfortable seat, bit of back support is quite good, like a wedge pillow or something, so that you kind of don't slump, because quite often people find themselves rolling towards their embroidery. So it's just one of those things. So
any particular needles?
No, I mean, we use different types of needles for different types of projects. So in this one, we're using an embroidery needle that's a size 10, and we're using a tapestry needle. The tapestry needle is just to plunge the ends through for these threads that are frayable. And as I say, I'll show you how to use that in a bit. But it's just whatever you can see that you need to be able to thread up, really. People think there's a lot of rules and regs about it, but we tend to use blunt needles for things that we're going through the holes of fabric, so cross stitch, canvas work, black work, things like that, because you don't want to pierce the fabric, you want to go through the hole. So a blunt needle helps with that, whereas sharp needles and most other things. So we're using a smallish needle for this one, because we're going to go through the core of some of the other threads later on, so you need a finer needle to be able to pass through the middle. But other than that, that's as complicated as it gets. So people overcomplicate these things.
Yeah, I think people think, well, gold work, I'm going to have all of these different
major kits. Yeah, major kit for this. No, not really. So it's one of those things, you can start pretty small scale, although your obsession will grow. So You know,
You've been warned.
I'm putting it out there, I'm being honest. So the other way of turning a corner sharply, and you can use that for the tips of the turn here in the butterfly, in the tips of the wings there, or even in the dragonfly in the top there, if I can layer that on top. In the corners here, we've got quite sharp turns. So the way that you could comfortably turn those is also another way. So you'd separate the two threads, you put a stitch over the outer one, nice and small, up and down to the same hole. Hold that thread tight, bend that back on itself individually, and then you'll put your stitch over the inner thread, but you'll put it so it's slightly further in. So if I stitch slightly further in on that line, tighten it again and bend that back on itself individually, I can then put them back together as a pair and make sure that they're then sitting, my next stitch will sit quite close to that turn point, and it will encourage it to sit in a very sharp point. So you'll see the difference between the two finishes when I pull this through. Can you see that the one is naturally sharper than the other? Yeah. So the one that I've just done is a lot sharper than the first one, which was a bit of a softer bend. And as I say, if we tweaked that first one with tweezers or whatever, it would look sharper, but as I say, each to your own. It depends on if you want a softer finish or a lighter finish.
And like you said, it's actually more sort of forgiving than you think. And nobody's going to say that one's sharp and that one. You can just
absolutely
have a play around with it.
You know, I'm not being funny. They're not going to have my sample sitting with them at home, and nobody's going to sit there and compare the picture to the actual finished piece. So, you know, you have to produce a piece that you're happy with on your wall or giving to somebody or whatever you're going to do with it. So, you know the tuition's in the template and on the programme, obviously, but yeah, apart from that, you're on your own, enjoy it.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. We've got some more messages. Ellen, totally absorbed. That was it. You're addicted, Ellen. Oh, I'm pleased you're loving it.
Good.
Naomi's got in touch with us as well. I'm thrilled to see Helen on the show. My niece Izzy is a second-year student at the NSL. Amazing. HCP, where's that?
Hampton Court Palace. Yeah.
So that's where you were as well?
Yes, yeah.
Amazing. I'll be sending her a link to this, and then you got cut off, Naomi. But Penny, happy second birthday, loving the show, especially the gold work. That's from Penny in Swansea.
Good stuff. Excellent.
Kathleen's asked a question. Do you have to back the fabric with silk when in the hoop?
Well, okay. So you can see on these ones, what I've done is I've just put I've just got the silk, but for preference, what you'd probably do is you'd put a layer of calico into the hoop. So when you put your silk, when you've drawn your pattern on your silk, you'd pop a piece of calico underneath it and pop it together in the frame, and it basically just gives it some strength, because I'm just doing a small design here, so that's why I've not, and it's the ends through it are minimal, and I'm used to what I'm doing. Whereas on my actual piece that are on the wall, I did put that layer of calico underneath it, and it's just to encourage you to have that. It's a safety net more than anything else. It's to have a bit of security, because when you're putting the ends through the fabric, people quite often worry that the silk's going to tear. In reality, unless you're being really ham-fisted with it, then you're really unlikely to do that. But the calico offers just that bit of security to help, you know, feel more comfortable about that and keep the silk nice and in good condition. So yeah, so you could put a layer of calico underneath, and it just gives it a bit of, as I say, a bit of a safety net, so that you feel comfortable with taking those ends through. So people panic a bit less when you've got that in place.
Yeah, when you've got that on the back as well. I would be worried about what the back of it looks like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somebody once said to me that asking to see the back of somebody's embroidery is a bit like asking to see somebody's knickers.
Oh, right, okay.
So,
well, Paul always does, doesn't he?
Asks to see the back, or it's you know, it's a bit of a joke to say, but it is worth pointing out. It's this very Victorian obsession with the idea that you've got to see the back, and the back's got to be the same as the front. The back's a working area. It's not an aesthetic area. Yeah. So as long as it's neat and it's tidy and you've worked in an orderly manner, don't worry too greatly about it. It's going to be fine, you know. So don't let that stop you. It's fine.
Should we go and quickly recap, and then we can do the
absolutely,
some more? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, we can go and quickly recap Oh, I'm so pleased that you're loving it as much as we are. We are so excited about this. So, bit of a stock warning. We knew this would happen. I think everybody's going to get addicted to this, aren't we? I'm certainly going to have a go at this. Once everybody checks out, there is now single figures remaining. And I mean, there's a lot of people that have got them in their baskets. So again, not to pressure or to rush you, but just to simply warn you. It's the first time we've ever done gold work, and everything's in the kit that Helen has put together for you. So the butterfly first. Here are your lovely instructions, which have got all of Helen's templates, her designs, her stitch plan, the images, her own artwork, the drawings, the inspiration. It's just gorgeous. And of course, you're going to be able to watch the show back at any point to get all of Helen's tips again. So you have all of her instructions in there, which will come with it, including, as I say, your stitch plan. You've even got a template, up to you whether you want to maybe use some of your colours and decide where you want your threads going. You also have brand new silk, brand new hoop as well, brand new metal threads, everything that you're going to need in there to create, and a bit more, Helen said, so to have a bit of a play around with. And then also, am I saying this right? Mercerized skein. Mercerized. Mercerized skein as well. Brand new. You've got the blue and you've got the purple. 15 metres on each. So there's that one. If everybody checks out, there's 5 left. There's only 5 left, and that's for the butterfly. The dragonfly is this one. But there's lots of details in here. I mean, Helen's going to talk you through everything from fastening off, talk to you about your Japanese gold, couching around right-angled corners, all sorts. You've got your step-by-step instructions. If everybody checks out, it's completely sold out on the dragonfly. Again, be careful, just be careful, be careful. If you do really want this kit, which I know so many of you do, we'll do our best to get more in, but it will sold out if everybody checks out. There's your silk, your hoop, the threads, and you also have your skeins, brand new. £49.99. Just very quickly as well, you are going to get addicted to this. If you want another hoop, maybe, to have a go. These are lovely, aren't they? They're really nice with the sort of brass, very antique-y looking. £2.49. And if there isn't going to be enough bling-bling on there, then why not add some Swarovski crystals, genuine Swarovski crystals. I always feel like I'm saying it wrong. Swarovski. I have to put my teeth back in after saying that. 12 in a pack. £2.99. Okay. Come on, let's go back over to Helen. We're loving this hour. I wish you need to come back and do a whole day with us.
I know. We'll have a big project day.
Yes.
So what we can do is we're going to stitch on the Swarovskis and crystals, whatever you want to call them. So they've got metal mounts in them. So basically the idea is that the crystal sits in the top and it's got a metal mount that has claws on it that holds it in place. And the metal mount has a hole that goes north-south and one that goes east-west. So you're basically wanting to stitch it on. So you'd use a double thread. So you've got a
slightly longer one there,
yeah,
haven't you?
So I've got a slightly longer one. So you want normally a fingertip to elbow length. I have slightly long arms, so it tends to be a slightly longer length. But you'll look also at the condition of the threads. So these are nice solid threads, so fingertip to elbow length, long arm or otherwise.
Do you condition it? Do you use a beeswax?
Well, yeah, so for the crystals you don't need to, but when we start to work on the cutwork threads, I'll show you how to condition your thread and explain why we do that. So, but as I say, fingertip to elbow length. This one's doubled, so fingertip to elbow length twice. I've put the needle onto the thread and knotted it together. And then what you can do is, as I say, you slide the needle through in one direction. So I don't know if you can see that. I've slid it through north-south. Take it down to the fabric, nudge it into position, and then stitch down just angled very slightly underneath the crystal so it holds it into position. catching it on top of the toe. The dragonfly's toe is catching the crystal thread. There you go. And then I would do it in the opposite direction as well. So you want a stitch going in one way, and then you'll put the stitch in the other way. So I'm just coming out from underneath. I'm tugging through the hole. So just pass it through. A bit like how you sew a button on.
Yeah.
You know, a button with a shank, you do the same, and then you angle out underneath.
But full bling sparkle.
You know what?
It does just look like the most amazing piece
Bring
of
on the
jewellery,
glitter.
though, doesn't it?
I know.
I'm sure I saw it. It must have been on your Twitter, or I'm not sure where you were, and there was the most amazing, was it Versace?
Yes, I'd been to the most incredible exhibition. It was at the Met in New York, and it was crystal galore on this particular jacket. I think it was an Yves Saint Laurent, and I'd done a video of it because as you walked around it, the lights bouncing off this thing was just monster bling, and I was just like loving it. So I put it on, and I think that was the most response to most of my posts. It was like, there's glitter fiends out there, and I'm happy about that because that suits me. But yeah, so it was one of those things that you're just like absolute glitter fiends, and crystals always do that for you. It's just one of those things that it's just such a pleasing finish.
And you've done things on the red carpet as well, haven't you?
Yes,
the Oscars, lots of glitter again.
Yeah, so lots of glitter. I've done stuff for Kate Moss, and that was a dress covered in Swarovskis. That was for Fashion Rocks. That was when I worked at Hand and Lock in London. When I worked for the RSN in their studios, we did a dress for Naomi Harris, who's been in Pirates of the Caribbean and Bond movies as Miss Penny P and stuff. And she wore this dress to the Oscars, and it was covered in metal threads, gold and crystals and beads, and it was a red carpet green dress, so it was an eco-friendly, sustainable textiles dress. So that's always very interesting. So they choose an event every year that they dress somebody to be eco-friendly. So sustainable textiles. So that was a really lovely one. But yeah, I mean, stitch buttons on Elton John's jacket, you name it.
What a claim to fame.
Yeah, I know, you can't go wrong with that.
Kate Middleton, Move Stars, I've put, it's Elton John's buttons
It's a funny job, you know, it's one of those things people kind of, as I say, never kind of grasp what you do, and then you try to explain it and you're like, yeah, and that happened, and that was funny, and then that happened, and this was weird, and they're like, oh, and this is pretty good, and people kind of like, people tend to remember more about what I've done than I do, and they'll be like, do you remember when you worked on that? And I'll be like, oh yeah, that was a great job.
So Vivienne Westwood as well, you've worked with Vivienne Westwood?
Yeah, and apparently she's got my gold work book on her bookshelf. I was very impressed because Vivienne Westwood's like one of my fashion idols. I love, because she's a history buff as well, very into her tailoring. So
what's your book then? What's it called?
So it's the Royal School of Needlework Essential Stitch Guide to Gold Work. So as I say, if you like this technique, it's a step-by-step process and it takes you through. And as I say, it's a really kind of straightforward book, whether you've done it before or whether you've never done it before. There's something for everybody.
Well, do you know what? It's been so popular because all of your kits have sold out.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, lovely. Thank you very much.
Apologies if you have got it in your basket still. It's now completely sold out. We will do our best to get Helen back. We need more.
Absolutely. Sounds like it. So with the purl, we'll show you how to do that. So the legs and the legs of the dragonfly are the purl, and then the antenna on the butterfly, the little antenna in the front there, are also the purl. So you basically stitch this down. It stretches out slightly, so you'll give it a little bounce, and it's just to ease. Can you see I'm not pulling it, I'm just bouncing it, and it just relaxes that metal a little bit. And then the idea is that you basically hold it down. So I'm going to put a stitch, and because we've kind of relaxed the loops a little bit, the stitch will sit in between the grooves and it will start to fasten it straight on. So all you need to do then is to make sure that you've got a stitch at the very start and the very end, and then you'll kind of work on the assumption that you want kind of every other groove to be filled with a stitch, and it will hold it down really neatly into position. And as I say, it's got quite a lot of body to these threads, so kind of like
I'm like you. Everything I just have to feel the texture.
That's it. I mean, it's a lovely thing. You can just, and as I say, I'm just moulding it round that corner, so you can see I've just bent it to in position. So you just stitch it down. So you want to be down more or less into the same hole, and it just sits into the groove then, so you can't see the stitch. So you decide how long you want it, put it in place. And then you don't you don't see it because it sits invisibly, because it's sitting in that groove. So as I say, you come to the end. So I'm going to give it another little turn just to ease it out at the bottom. What I'm going to do is I want to cut that off, so I'm going to just get my scissors. Make sure you're not cutting through your working thread.
Any particular scissors you need to use to work with?
Well, you can get metal scissors, so they have a serrated blade.
Okay.
So they're quite good because when you're doing cut work, which is what we're going to do next, it means that the metal doesn't roll, so you get a precise cut. Whereas in reality, for passing threads and things like that, you can use your normal scissors. It's not going to really blunt it. The purl's the only one that really blunts your scissors. So sometimes people just keep a pair of goldwork scissors and they're normal scissors, but they just keep them for goldwork. So they'll put a little ribbon on them so they remember, so they don't blunt their favourite ones. And then what you want to do is to just put a little stitch in the end to make sure it holds into position, because you want it to lie flat. So you can see that that goes on quite quickly.
Yeah. It actually comes together really quickly. You see
people are shocked about this. They always expect it to be a slower process. So it's interesting when you can kind of get going with it. So shall we look at the cut work?
We've got about 6 minutes.
Yeah, the cut work's the last technique, so it's quite quick. So what you want to do is you want to double thread. So so you'll wax your thread, and in the kit you've got a little wax conditioner, so it's beeswax.
Oh, I saw that in the kit. I thought, oh, what's the button for?
What's that for? Yeah, it's beeswax. So it's 100% pure beeswax. You run the thread through it, and it's to basically make sure that any fibres that might be sticking off that thread don't catch.
Right.
Okay. So you basically want to do that, and then what you can do is get your needle threaded up. You use a double thread when you're doing cut work, so that you don't end up, because it's going through the middle of it, you can be using 2 threads because it basically makes it stronger to hold to the fabric. Tends to be rule of thumb, unless you're trying to create a particular aesthetic. You'll use a single thread when you're going over something and a double thread when you're going through it. So it's a good rule to remember. So what you do then is all you need to do is to cut the threads to a particular length that you want. So in this case, we want quite small pieces. So you generally, for a chip, you'd look at the width of the metal, you cut it so that it's just slightly longer than it is wide, so little rectangular chips. Okay, so if I just transfer that onto here so that you can see that they're tiny.
Yeah.
Okay, so like little beads, like little seed beads, and then you literally thread it on and stitch it flat. Okay, so, and you do that, so nice small pieces stitched down at random angles so that they're nice and secure. And it just fills in the area like that. And it just, as I say, it's just a massive twinkle then. And you just work through as per the guide, depending on which colour, or if you don't like where the colour's placed in the piece, you've got plenty to play with. You can just, you know, flip it over and do a different finish.
Have you got fantastic eyesight? Have you seen that? I've seen a lot of people working with the magnifying glass.
Yeah, so I mean, I quite often say to people to take their embroidery at the finest level that they do with them to the optician.
Yeah.
So it's a good tip, because quite often you're not being tested for your craft, and you want to spend quite a lot of time doing that.
That's such a good idea.
So if you take a piece of embroidery with you, then obviously you want to be tested for driving and walking, so you're not like Mr. Magoo or something. But yeah, taking your embroidery with you, if it is something you're serious about and you like doing a lot of, then it's worth making sure, because sometimes they can tell you what level of magnification you need to just clip onto your glasses. Yeah. So that's, rather than just overkilling it with a generic thing.
But this is the sort of height distance that you want to be working.
Yeah, I want to be quite close to the work. A, because it doesn't mean that I'm rolling towards it then, because I'm struggling to see it, but also because it needs to be the distance that you can see and operate at. So, as I say, it needs to be comfortable for each person. But and that's why the adjustable sized seat frames are quite good. You know, the stands that you can adjust the height of work pretty well. So,
but you need to bring more to us. You need to bring more.
I bring all my goodies in. Yeah.
Is there any? Can we have a look at? We've got literally a couple more minutes. Are there any ones that, I mean, look at some of Helen's work. Talk us through a couple of these. I mean, I love the
I've just brought a selection of goodies in today. So this is metal thread, obviously. So it's some of the techniques that you've been looking at, but it's slightly more advanced. So this one's actually padded in sections to raise it up, and that's one of the next things that you can do. And you can use different tones of metal in the same way that we are in this, but I've just striped them through to create shade and light on the body. And chips, we've got chips through here, so that's a technique you've just seen. Yeah. We've got overstretched purl through here and normal purl around the wings. So as I say, it's building up skills. So it's a bit like when you're learning vocab, you kind of learn simple words and you then harder words and then harder words, and you build more complex sentences. Stitching's the same. So it's that confidence at the start to build. So yeah, so this is a technique called ornue. So this is where you use the same type of metal that we were using to start with, but what you do is you stitch over it with colour. And it really kind of, it's quite hard to see, isn't it? But that's it, beautiful. So what you do is we've got the chips through here, through the back and through the leg, which is exactly the same as I've just shown you. And then this is the same type of metal, but rather than stitching with a self colour, as we have done today, we've used a contrast colour, the blue or the pink. But what you do is you put those stitches nearer to each other or further away, in quite subtle shades in this one, to create form, so the idea of shade. So yeah, so that's, as I say, ornue, and then it's got a bit of surface stitching at the bottom, which is feather stitch, French knots, straight stitches, things like that.
It's amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'm so sorry that we've run out of time. It's gone so quick. There's so much more I want to talk about. Good luck at the finals as well. You're nominated for Designer of the Year.
Embroidery Designer of the Year. Yeah, but really chuffed.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Please come back and let us know how you are. We're all definitely going to book onto your course, aren't we, Victoria? We're coming to see you. But lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
These
you.
are lovely. We've
Thanks for having me.
Loved having you here. We'll see you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Okay. Now, there's not much to recap because everything's sold out, which is brilliant. I'm so pleased that you love it. But if you want some needles, these are some of our favourite needles that whenever we do stock them, which one, number 10 or 24? So, whenever we get our tulip needles in, they are always really, really popular. These are your round tip, size 24.